The African savanna stretched endlessly under the fierce blaze of the late morning sun. Golden rays pierced through the haze of heat, painting the plains in shimmering waves that seemed alive, breathing with the rhythm of earth itself. Acacia trees stood scattered like silent watchmen of history, their branches carrying the songs of small birds that fluttered and chirped with fleeting innocence. A pride of lions lay sprawled in tall, whispering grass, their chests rising and falling in perfect sync with the stillness of the wild. Not a single cloud marred the sky, not a single warning sign disturbed the calm. Yet deep beneath that fragile silence, the earth stirred with something ancient, something powerful. Then came the sound, a distant rumble, low at first, like the growl of the land itself awakening. In moments it swelled into thunder, shaking the ground, ripping the peace apart. Birds scattered in frantic clouds, wildebeests bolted, and suddenly, like the pounding of war drums, hundreds of buffalo surged forward, their eyes burning wild, hooves crashing like rolling thunder. Dust rose in thick clouds, swallowing the sun. Panic consumed the plains. Lions roared and scattered, prey fled in terror, the very earth trembling with the chaos of life and death colliding. In the madness, a fragile figure tumbled, a lion cub, flung sideways by a stray hoof, spinning helplessly into the storm of dust. It hit the ground hard. For a moment it didn't move. The herd surged around it, hooves pounding inches from its fragile body, missing it by nothing but the mercy of chance. And then silence. The cub whimpered faintly, lifted its small head and stumbled into the grass. Alone, limping, bleeding, forgotten. The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest of men are cruel. The cub's tiny frame pushed against the cruel weight of the wilderness. Every few steps its body faltered, every breath shallow, strained. Its golden coat, once gleaming with youthful promise, was streaked with dust and blood. A gash marked its leg, oozing slowly, leaving trails of pain with every movement. Its eyes, wide and filled with confusion, scanned desperately for the pride, for the warmth of a mother, the protective shadow of a father, the comfort of siblings. But the vast grassland stretched indifferent and merciless. Only the buzz of flies clung to its wound. Only the echoes of the stampede lingered. And as the cub collapsed again, panting in the suffocating heat, it let out a pitiful sound, a broken cry, more whimper than roar. Far away, Ranger Elijah Mangi sipped the last of his tea under the shade of his patrol vehicle. The rumble had reached him, a vibration through the soles of his boots, a thundering echo that spoke of chaos. He climbed onto the step of his Land Cruiser, binoculars raised, scanning the horizon. Dust, vultures. A tremor of unease moved through him. He knew the savannah never screamed without reason. But while Elijah searched, deeper still, among fig trees in the shadowed underbrush, another heard the cry. A silverback gorilla, massive, ancient in presence, his black fur shimmering with sunlight as he lifted his head. His ears caught it, his heart registered it, the cry of a creature not his own, yet desperate, raw, universal. Slowly he stood. Slowly he listened again. The cry came like a thread through the wind, small, broken, fading, and still he walked toward it. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fattened calf together, and a little child shall lead them. Through dry grass and heat, the cub staggered, trembling under the weight of pain and fear. Its tiny voice tried again, a weak, squeaky growl meant to summon help, but the wilderness remained indifferent. And then shadows shifted. From a thicket the gorilla emerged, towering immense, his knuckles pressed into the soil with a slow, deliberate calm. His chest rose and fell like the steady heartbeat of the earth itself. His eyes locked on the tiny figure crumpled in the dust. For a breathless moment, time froze. The lion cub froze too, eyes wide with primal instinct, fear mixing with helplessness. Yet the gorilla did not advance with threat. He paused, tilted his massive head, then reached down. From the earth he pulled soft moss, cool and damp. With steps that shook the ground, he closed the distance. The cub whimpered but did not run, it could not. Kneeling beside the fragile creature, the gorilla pressed the moss gently against its wound. His massive fingers, capable of breaking trees, moved with a tenderness that spoke a language beyond words. A soft grunt left his chest, not a warning, but comfort. The cub blinked through tears of exhaustion. It leaned instinctively into the warmth of this stranger, a guardian born not of blood, but of choice. Shade from the gorilla's body shielded it from the punishing sun, and for a brief moment the savannah breathed differently. For a brief moment, predator and protector became one. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Mercy in the wild is always tested. A sudden rustle tore through the grass. The gorilla's head snapped up, the cub pressed closer against his frame. From the shifting blades, two leopards slid into view, sleek, muscles coiled like drawn bows, their golden eyes glinting with hunger. Their gaze locked instantly on the lion cub. They had smelled weakness. They had heard the cry, but they had not expected him. The gorilla rose, an immovable wall between predator and prey. His towering form loomed like a storm-given flesh, his eyes burning with a primal fire not of violence, but of resolve. The cub trembled, burying its small frame against the safety of his legs. The leopards circled, surprised yet undeterred. One flanked left, the other straight ahead, their bodies weaving with deadly grace. The gorilla answered with a thunderous beat to his chest, one strike deep and echoing like a drum of war across the plain. Dust shimmered around him, catching the sun like fire. The cub flinched, then pressed closer, knowing without knowing that he was safe. Leopards crouched lower, muscles twitching with the temptation to strike. The gorilla reached, seized a heavy branch and slammed it into the ground. The earth shook. Dust exploded upward in a choking cloud. A guttural roar escaped him, not a lion's call, but something deeper, older, a sound that belonged to the dawn of time. For a heartbeat, the leopards faltered. The wind shifted. The sun blinded one with a shaft of light through dust. Still, they tested, creeping closer, but the gorilla did not give ground. He stood taller, his body a shield, his branch raised like a weapon forged of earth itself. His silence spoke. Not this one, not today. The leopard snarled, uncertain. A moment stretched into eternity, and then with a hiss the first leopard turned. Its body melted back into the grass, surrendering. The second lingered, growled low, but the fire of its hunger dimmed in the face of unwavering resolve. Finally, it too slunk away, swallowed by the tall blades of grass. The savannah sighed, as though the earth itself acknowledged the choice made. The gorilla lowered the branch, turned to the cub and placed a hand gently on its tiny back. It was safe. It was alive. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. The sun shifted lower in the sky, painting the savannah in hues of amber and fire. Ranger Elijah arrived at last, his vehicle rolling cautiously into the clearing. His binoculars slipped from his hands as he froze at the sight before him. A lion cub, leaning against the chest of a silverback gorilla, both resting in the silence after battle. It was a scene that defied everything he had ever known about the wild. Compassion, choice, love, these things were not supposed to belong here. Yet here they were, raw and undeniable, carved into the heart of nature itself. Elijah felt his chest tighten, his eyes blur. He stepped forward, careful not to disturb. The gorilla's gaze met his, deep and unyielding, and in that silent exchange no words were needed. Man, beast, and the eternal wild stood bound by one truth: empathy transcends kind. With the cub safe, the gorilla rose at last. He turned, casting one final glance, then melted back into the shadows of trees, leaving only the imprint of his choice upon the earth. The cub whimpered softly, but help was near now. Elijah lifted it gently, whispering promises of safety. And as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, the savannah glowed with something eternal, the reminder that miracles breathe in the wild, that compassion is not bound by species, and that even in the heart of survival, love can rewrite destiny. For the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now, but creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. The dust of the savannah still lingered in the air, dancing golden in the late afternoon light as silence slowly reclaimed the land. The two leopards had disappeared into the sea of tall grass, their hunger unsatisfied, their pride wounded by a guardian they could not challenge. The gorilla stood unmoving, his broad chest rising and falling as he exhaled deeply, finally lowering the heavy branch from his hands. It fell into the earth with a muted thud, forgotten. For a long moment the world seemed to pause. The lion cub, eyes wide and glistening with a mix of fear and awe, looked up at the towering figure who had defied predators to shield it. Though still trembling, though still bleeding from its small wound, it was alive because of a choice that no one expected. Slowly, the gorilla lowered himself to the ground once more, settling near the cub with deliberate gentleness, his massive arm scarred. A bed of moss pressed into the soil, still soft, untouched by sun or rain. Elijah smiled faintly, his chest heavy with gratitude. Nature had spoken. Its message was simple, eternal. True strength is not shown by those who fight only for themselves, but by those who choose to protect the weak when they could so easily walk away. In the wild, survival often rewards the fastest, the strongest, the most ruthless. But every once in a while, the world witnesses something far greater. A choice, a miracle. A moment of compassion that defies instinct. And it is in those rare, quiet moments that the true heart of nature is revealed. So if this story moved you as deeply as it moved us, share it, pass it forward. Because the world must remember that sometimes the fiercest protectors are the ones who never roar, never fight, never boast. Sometimes the greatest guardians are those who walk away in silence, leaving behind only hope, courage, and the memory of love. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. The savannah had fallen into silence again, a silence heavy with meaning, not emptiness. The leopards were gone, their hunger swallowed by the greater force of choice. The gorilla, still breathing deep from the standoff, lowered the branch and let it fall back into the earth. The lion cub's wide eyes shimmered, trembling but alive, filled with something more powerful than fear, trust. That little heart, once thundering with terror, now beat beneath the shadow of a protector it never should have known, yet somehow always needed. Slowly, the gorilla sank back to the ground, wrapping his massive arm gently around the fragile creature pressed against him. The wild had tested them both, and in this moment they had endured together. The cub's small body shivered, but this time not from fear, it was from the relief of still being here, still breathing, still held by a strength that had chosen mercy instead of violence. The Lord is good to all, his tender mercies are over all his works. Through the tall grass, Ranger Elijah pressed forward, each step heavier than the last. His eyes traced the ground, reading the story written in tracks. Two predators, leopards, their paw prints deep with hunger. The tiny prints of a cub, faltering, uneven. And then something so rare it made his breath catch, wide knuckle imprints pressed firm into the earth. Elijah's heart pounded as he whispered, "Nakuro's gorilla." His boots carried him up a rise where the land opened wide. He lifted his binoculars, hands trembling, and there it was, a scene that no ranger, no human, was ever meant to see. Beneath an acacia tree, bathed in the last golden light of afternoon, a massive gorilla sat with a lion cub resting against his chest. Protector and orphan, predator and prey, the impossible alive before his eyes. Elijah's throat tightened as he whispered to his camera, his voice shaking with awe. "The gorilla's protecting it. This isn't survival, this is choice. Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed." The gorilla rose slowly, nudging the cub with infinite gentleness. The tiny lion staggered to its feet, limping, but refusing to leave its guardian's side. Together they moved out from the shadows into the open plain, a sight that would forever live in Elijah's memory. A head movement stirred. A lioness stood tall at the base of rocks, her nostrils flaring. She caught a scent, faint but undeniable. Behind her the pride grew restless, muscles twitching, eyes scanning the wind. Then the moment arrived. The cub stepped into the open, its golden fur stained with dust and blood, but alive. Alive because a giant of another kind had chosen to stand. The lioness surged forward roaring, then slowed when she saw him, the gorilla, towering beside her cub. The air turned to glass, thick with tension, yet fragile with grace. The lioness growled low, but the gorilla did not return challenge. He simply looked down once more at the cub, his dark eyes lingering in a silence filled with meaning, then turned his back and walked calmly into the bush. He vanished without a sound. The lioness cried out, closing the gap, sweeping her cub into her embrace with desperate licks, pressing its body against hers as if she could fold it back into her heart. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Elijah stood rooted, tears burning his eyes, his camera capturing what his soul would never forget. A gorilla had protected a lion cub, a mother had her child again, and the savannah, often cruel, often unforgiving, had shown a miracle. Back at camp, Elijah uploaded the footage, titling it with trembling hands, "Gorilla Protects Lion Cub from Leopards, a True Story." Within hours, it spread across conservation networks. Within days, it touched millions. Headlines called it compassion beyond species, nature's unexpected guardians, the gorilla who chose love. Biologists argued, scientists debated, but people wept. Children sent letters saying they believed again in kindness. Families gathered to watch, whispering prayers of thanks for a world that still carried such wonders. But Elijah remembered not the fame, not the views, not the headlines. He remembered the silence between the roar and the rustle, the quiet moment when a giant chose peace. Weeks later, when he returned to the site, there were no tracks, no signs, only a fallen branch scarred by gorilla hands and a bed of moss pressed into the soil, still untouched. He smiled, his heart heavy with gratitude, because he knew what he had seen was not just survival, it was love written into the earth itself. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. Sparkles, this was more than an animal rescue, this was a miracle. A viral true story of survival, a touching animal bond, a dramatic wildlife rescue that showed the human race that the wild still carries love in its fiercest heart. The gorilla's silence spoke louder than any roar. Sometimes the strongest protectors are the ones who walk away without a sound, leaving behind only hope.